It's Mike's first flip. Welcome back, everybody. This is episode 3. Last episode, we took care of the framing and drywall in the bedroom, and today, we're gonna handle everything in the living room. We're gonna wrap that big beam and take care of the hallway opening. I basically just want the walls and the ceiling in this hallway entry to be flush. I don't want any doorway or casing like there was originally. After I took out those 2 vertical 2x4s, I cut the 2 top ones free with the reciprocating saw and then used a crowbar to pry them loose. And just like last week, I did make a little bit of a mess.
That's gonna be an easy fix.
And I'll eventually square off this whole patch to make the repair easier.
I should have been wearing an RZ mask there. Anyways, my dad's here, he's running the camera, and we are gonna switch tasks, switch from demoing out the hallway to wrapping the header beam that we installed, so this can all be open concepts. Also, thanks, Dad, he picked up 6 more sheets of 1/2-inch drywall. That should be enough to get the rest of the house finished. Whoa, got some water on it there. Let's get after it. I haven't done this yet. I'm trying to triple cut. 3 pieces at once.
So it turns out the triple cut is totally possible. I should have used a straight edge here whenever I was establishing my line, but either way, I still got 3 symmetrical pieces that I could use to put on the face of the beam. And thanks to my dad here for helping with these long, awkward pieces. This would have been a really difficult task for me to do on my own, even though the sheets weren't heavy. While one of us drilled, the other could push their drywall up, and that helped us get good contact.
And we'll take care of finishing this beam and the big hole in the drywall tomorrow. See ya.
It was a beautiful day, and I started by cutting a few long, thin strips of drywall to fill in the gaps along the walls. I also needed to cut some small filler pieces, and I was able to utilize the scrap that I had accumulated for all of those. I did try to use as many full pieces as possible, but unfortunately, I just had a few seams here all converging. If I were doing this project again, I wouldn't have made these drywall pieces inset because unfortunately, the pieces on the face of the beam extend a little past them, so I'm gonna have to trim them back later. Before I did that though, I got my circular saw and I cut some pieces of 2x4 to create a little bit of an extension for one of the walls under the beam. You'll see in just 1 second. It's just a little 6-inch kicker that I'm using to extend the wall that the refrigerator is on. Oh, and I figured out how to turn the pressure up on the Ryobi framing nailer so I didn't have to hit these in with a hammer like I did last time. The refrigerator's gonna sit just on the other side of this wall, so I didn't want people walking into the house looking right at a fridge. And it was sturdy.
The most dependable.
I had a few people asking me what kind of drywall screws I'm using. I'm using 1.25", which is standard with 1/2 inch. And I mention this always, but I'll leave links for the materials, tools, and supplies that I use down in the description below. There is one tool that I should have used a little more often, I think, and that's the drywall saw, so that I could have cut a few custom shapes and used a little less filler pieces.
Okay, let's check that fit. Oh, dang.
Looking back on the footage, I should have done this a little bit more often, and I will going forward. This is just how you learn. You try things and you get better by experience. I know there's a lot of pros that watch my content. I appreciate all the supportive comments and the helpful tips because I'm trying to incorporate them. And that's beam done.
And before we move on, I'd like to thank Factor for sponsoring today's episode. Factor delivers fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals to your doorstep on a weekly basis. Factor meals have been really convenient for me because 1, the kitchen is destroyed here in the house, and the Airstream trailer has a small kitchen that I don't want to dirty up. Factor is way healthier than most takeout options, plus it's oftentimes more affordable and way faster. Factor meals take about 2 minutes to prepare in the microwave and around 5 in the oven. I chose the keto option this week, which included this creamy Parmesan chicken. It was really tasty, the broccoli on the side was fresh, and a great option to pair with that chicken breast with the Alfredo sauce. And I'm not kidding, this chicken is really good. Plus, there's a lot of different plan options to fit your preferences. Choose from Chef's Choice, Keto, like I did, Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Vegan Veggie. Plus, Factor has a ton of cool add-ons like breakfast items, snacks, juices, smoothies, and more. Check it out. So to learn more, go to factor75.com or follow the link down in my description. And don't forget to use the code ModernBuilds50 for 50% off your first box from Factor. One more time, that's factor75.com, and the code is ModernBuilds50 for 50% off your first box from Factor. Thanks a ton. Now let's get back to this renovation. And now I'm just gonna square off this damaged area with this joist and this one, and we'll be able to patch it with one piece. Oh, geez. Oh.
I've had good luck using the oscillating multi-tool to square up any of my weird shaped drywall repairs. I'm using it to cut halfway through these ceiling joists. That way the old drywall can stay attached to it and the new drywall can screw into it and use it as a reference face.
And I whipped up a quick strong back. It's just a 2x4 with a 2x6. It's gonna marry up to those joists and connect these walls together. Plus it'll give a lot of surface area for the new drywall.
I tried to make sure that I didn't get any insulation underneath this piece and then nailed it in. It was cool seeing this ceiling piece go in because I finally got a chance to see what it was gonna look like with the ceiling flat, and man, it just opened up the space a ton. Eventually it's gonna look totally seamless and I can't wait for it. I did need to square up my line on this corner of the drywall, and I did that with the multi-tool, like always, and then put in my pieces with a little filler above the thermostat. I am gonna need to figure out how to get that thing off the wall and back on somehow. I'm not sure, the wires don't unplug from the back, so it's just there for now.
Awesome, and now that all this is opened up, I think it's gonna end up looking way better. Now it's time to take care of this overhang that I mentioned earlier, where I accidentally cut these drywall faces a little too long. I'm gonna use a wide blade here on my multi-tool. That way I've got a good reference surface.
I made sure to mask up, even threw on some goggles, and got after it. This fix only took about 15 or 20 minutes, but I could have avoided it completely, like I mentioned earlier, by not insetting that bottom piece. I should have had it butt up with the drywall pieces on the face of the beam. I should have just cut them a little bit shorter, about a half, 3/4 of an inch.
That went great. Now we can install some corner bead. In our last episode, I installed the drywall corner bead with screws, and it worked fine. I did have to go back and adjust things because I was putting a little bit too much pressure where I was screwing. From what I hear, that's pretty common for beginners, but I got it looking fine. But in today's episode, I'm trying out 3M61, which is spray adhesive for corner bead. The directions say to spray both the corner bead and the wall and let them sit for about 1 minute before you attach the two together. Just hold the can about 4 to 6 inches away from what you're spraying, and this really works like any other spray adhesive. All right, here we go, wish me luck. The upside to this though is it has a little bit longer set time before that per minute grab.
The first piece went well, so then I measured for my next couple of pieces. I wanted to try doing 2 pieces at once, and I wouldn't do that again if I were you. The adhesive ended up setting before I could do both pieces, so just know that in advance. In fact, I'll leave a link down below to a tutorial on this product by an industry pro that I learned from. Make sure and check that out if you're gonna do this. I'll also leave a couple other drywall videos from Jeff at Home Renovation and Vancouver Carpenter.
All right, maybe 2 at a time isn't the move.
Unfortunately, both of the adhesive had dried completely before I could put the second piece on. I just did a quick respray and everything was really grabby, so no harm, no foul.
Looks great down the line that way. Looking at it this way, we're good. So now I'm just gonna press it in, make sure we get good contact everywhere.
This adhesive is immediately grabby, but you can still move the corner bead around for about 15 seconds and make big adjustments. After that, for the next 30 seconds, you can still make micro adjustments and make sure that you've got a good straight line. After that, it is stuck in place. Doing this long stretch of beam was interesting. I had to try and get 2 pieces to match up and butt really nicely without a seam, and I was able to do it.
And at this point, it's best to stand back and really eyeball it and make sure you've got a straight line in this direction and this way.
So now that you know what I'm doing, I'll go ahead and let the music play and not interrupt. Enjoy.
Now I've just got a couple of small pieces to patch in.
I wish each of these pieces were about 8 feet and an inch, and I wouldn't have to do this, but I probably should have gotten some 10-footers anyways. Here I'm using my utility knife to make sure I don't have any raised or peeled edges on my old paint and drywall because I'm following it up with mesh tape over the drywall corner bead and any of my drywall seams. This supposedly is not a necessary step, but I've seen it recommended, so I'm doing it.
The last episode, in the comments, you all mentioned that I shouldn't be using lightweight joint compound with mesh tape. So I picked up standard weight, all-purpose joint compound, and that's what we're gonna be using today. And for convenience, I'm using a flat drywall hawk.
If you haven't used a flat drywall hawk instead of a mud pan, it is a huge upgrade. I'll leave a link down below. I started off everything with a putty knife. I'm not using any trowels just because I'm familiar with this tool. As I get going, I'll try them out and I'll let you know what I think. What's really great about working with this plastic corner bead is the corner is raised off of the drywall just a little bit, and that really gives you a good reference edge and helps you make a taper that's really clean and consistent. And it did take quite a bit of joint compound to fill the negative space on the ends of the wall and the bottom of the header, but I guess I'm glad I used tape for that reason. And you can use quite a bit of pressure with your tool to really flatten out that face and get a good look. I basically just got a lot of joint compound and back buttered all of that area and then came back and tried to squeegee the whole edge in one big pass. On this first coat, I'm only using a 4-inch wide knife. That's what I've seen pros do online, so I'm copying them. On my second and third coats, I'll come back with something like a 10 or 12-inch knife or trowel that'll give me a wider taper that once paint's on will be harder to see with the naked eye. I also put a filler piece in right here. After the electrical is done, these wires will no longer be hanging down and I can fill in those tiny little holes, but for now, I wanted to get the rest of the drywall repair complete. Joint compound does take a while to dry, so I figured this would be worth it. While I was at it, I also took care of mudding all of the seams around this wall repair that I did where there used to be a closet doorway. Then I moved into the hallway opening and took care of my flat repairs in this one outside corner. Next episode, we're going to be tackling this big drywall repair in the hallway. I think I can get it ready for texture in a day or 2 half days, so make sure and tune in and see if I can get it done. And sorry for the blurry shot here on the ceiling.
For the inside corners, I got this roll of paper tape with metal on the inside. It's flexible, it bends to 90 degrees, and it's supposed to stay straight, so let's test it out.
Whenever you're using paper tape, you want to do something called bedding the tape in, and essentially that's like back buttering a tile. First, you'll add the joint compound into the corner and then install that paper corner piece. Then you'll squeegee out the excess material starting from the center.
All right, so that bedded in there really nice, and the corner looks really straight. So now I'm gonna go back and do my first flood coat.
I've heard other people call this a block coat, but basically I put a really thin coat over the tape and then squeegeed that out as well. I wanted to make sure that it's locked into the mud. I've heard that that helps it keep from bubbling. The ceiling had a little bit more texture, so I sanded that down before I started putting in some mud in my corner. This type of drywall work is new for me, and honestly, one of the toughest parts is spreading the joint compound out along a long run like this. That's one of the reasons that I didn't want to use one of the fast setting muds that you mix up. I think that's called hot mud. It has a much faster set time than pre-mixed joint compound like what I'm using. And even though it does take longer to cure, that work time is really essential for someone like me so I can still go back and make adjustments. Oh, and I will say, I really liked this metal reinforcement on the corner tape. It seemed to work really well for me. If you're experienced with standard paper tape, this probably isn't worth it, but if you're new to the game like me and you don't have a huge project, this might just be a game changer. This stuff worked great on the beam, and it helped me blend out the repair in the hallway nicely. In comparison though, this stuff is super expensive. It was about $30 for 100 feet versus about $4 for 250 feet of standard paper tape.
This is our final inside corner on the beam. We're gonna get this bedded with mud, and then I'll add tape and smooth everything out.
I did run out of the metal reinforced tape using it other places in the house, so on this last corner, I used standard paper tape, and I still did get good results. It didn't quite line itself up like the metal reinforcement, but it was good.
And that is a wrap on episode 3. Thanks a ton for watching. I actually got a lot of really good advice from episode 2, so keep those good comments coming. I appreciate the support, and we'll see you very soon for episode 4 of Mike's First Flip. Bye.